Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles de Gaulle. Now to France, where there is anger, blame and condemnation over an open letter signed by active soldiers warning that the country is heading for civil war due to religious extremism. About 1,000 servicemen and women, including some 20 generals, put their names to the letter, warning that Islamists were taking over whole parts of France's territory and blaming what they called fanatic partisans for creating divisions between communities. The hour is grave, they said, and France is in peril. The message, which was published in a right-wing magazine, has been condemned by the French government. It comes as France marks 60 years since a failed coup d'etat against General Charles de Gaulle. Well, for more on this, let's cross to Paris now and speak to the Paris bureau chief for the Associated Press, Angela Charlton, who is also the news director for Western Europe for the AP News Agency. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. We appreciate the time that you've taken to talk with us. First of all, what's the latest on that story? I understand the French army chief is calling for those military staff who signed the letter to resign.
Yes, thank you for having me today. Indeed, the French military chief has urged those who signed the letter to resign because he says they have violated this general doctrine that military people should stay out of politics. There was a second letter. There was this first letter a couple of weeks ago and a second letter that came out this Sunday. There's also been a shift after the first letter. The first letter was openly supported by far-right leader Marine Le Pen. That was, she came under, as you mentioned, strict condemnation from the government and a lot of the mainstream political class here. This second letter she is notably not supported, but the second letter shows that this sentiment remains out there, and there is certainly support for it in a certain part of the French population.
Well, that was going to be my next question, because I mean those were pretty powerful letters. I mean, alleging that the French government was granting concessions to Islamists and warning that France is heading towards civil war. I mean, what sort of impact has it had in France?
It has certainly had a big impact. Everyone has been talking about it. To be fair, the support for it has come largely from the far right. However, what the polls are suggesting is that there are a certain number of statements within the letters that have struck a chord with a broader part of the population. Concerns about security, concerns about Islamic extremism, which France has suffered from in the past, and concerns just about tensions within society and security in general. Those are things that tap into a larger audience. However, those who truly believe that France is heading toward a civil war remain a very, very small minority.
But I mean, in terms of, sorry, go on.
Most it's far right, and the support you'll see splits pretty cleanly along political lines, with those on the left and the center condemning this kind of letter, those on the far right openly supporting it, and the more mainstream conservatives supporting some of the ideas, but not necessarily the whole letter.
Right, okay, we missed a little bit of what you said there, so let me put it this way. In terms of the reaction of the populace to that warning, beyond what we've seen on the political level, the right wing that you were talking about and so on, has it led to a wider debate on the issue of Islamism in France?
It has revived that discussion. This is a discussion that comes up really very frequently here, and notably there was an attack on a police official a few weeks ago in her police station that authorities blame on an Islamic extremist, and that too has brought this debate back up again. Macron himself, who is a centrist but who has been leaning toward the right on security issues, his government has pushed multiple laws about security in recent months, including one that he has said targets what he calls Islamist separatism. So that's become a discussion again in the wake of these letters, which has churned up a lot of emotion and a lot of condemnation. The majority of the French do not agree with the statements in this letter, but it's certainly something that is close to the surface here and is an important issue, especially as we look ahead to two important electoral dates. One, we have regional elections coming up in France next month, but more importantly, there's the presidential election in 2022, which will start in April of 2022, and a lot of people have their eyes on that, and security will be a major issue, and I think these questions about Islamism and its presence and role in France will be very important.
Well, absolutely, and those elections you're talking about, very critical indeed. But of course, this is also coming as France marks the 60th anniversary of a failed coup d'etat against General Charles de Gaulle. I mean, is the timing of all this significant?
There is a significance to that, to a certain part of the French population. That was a failed coup. Since then, I mean, France is a democracy. It's not a place where you see regular military coups, and so that's one of the reasons this language was so shocking to people in France. It's not something they're used to reading about their own country. And I think that anniversary struck a chord, particularly with an older generation, particularly with certain parts of the military. And particularly with the Le Pen sort of circle and her far-right party, National Rally. Marine Le Pen's father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, very much supported France's colonial control over Algeria. He fought to defend that. And de Gaulle was the one who ultimately signed away Algeria's independence. And Le Pen's father, Jean-Marie, was also someone who later went on to become a major political player in France, but was also convicted of denying the Holocaust, of racism on multiple occasions. And Marine, his daughter, has worked very hard for many years to distance herself from that kind of attitude and to present herself as a more palatable, more modern figure. So that's why her support for this first letter in particular was surprising to some people and politically risky for her, because as the French Prime Minister said later, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. He really wanted to put her back in the camp of her father and that generation of people who fought to keep Algeria as part of France and keep the French colonial empire.
Well, that's absolutely fascinating. And of course, the French are leading the fight against jihadists in Africa, the Sahel, etc. Is there value in those missions that the French are conducting? I mean, does the general French public see it as valuable? Is it delivering results and a sense that the battle is being won?
That's a key question right now. In general, the French have supported these foreign operations by the French military in Africa, notably, also in the Middle East. France currently has a little over 5,000 troops in Africa and the Sahel region. They've been there ever since 2013 when they intervened to stop jihadists from taking control of Mali. That mission has generally had support across the political spectrum and among the French public, but that has been changing, and as it wears on, and as we see that these attacks are still happening in Mali, that there's still a lot of uncertainty in that region, questions are being raised. Overall, France has lost about 60 troops in the region over these past 8 years. That's not that many, but it's still, each one is one too many for the French public. Just over the last few months, Macron has also come under fire from some critics at home, but also from some Africans for this presence, and they're asking the exact same questions. Is it really working? Is it really worth it? So far, the French government and the French military remain committed to it, but it's a sensitive question. And as you mentioned, France has also been the target of terrorist attacks at home, and that's one of the big reasons the French public has largely supported these, even when they see losses abroad. What they really don't want are to see losses at home.
Angela Charlton, I want to thank you very much indeed for your analysis there. Thank you for joining us. Angela Charlton is the Paris Bureau Chief for the Associated Press and also News Director for Western Europe for the AP News. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead, including the deepening security crisis in Nigeria prompts action from governors of the 17 southern states in the country. Stay with us.